Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Estate Market Report for Gilroy, California for March of 2023. This is where we take a little time out to review the numbers for the month, but also compare them to previous months and also the same time last year so we can do a slice of time, get a year-over-year feel for how things are changing. One important thing to remember about March is that is the month last year when interest rates started to increase. So keep that in the back of your mind as we're looking through this data to pinpoint the changes in buyers' habits as a response to that increased interest rate. So let's go ahead and jump in and take a look. As we always do, we're going to go ahead and start with the total active listings. This is the total inventory of homes. So for you sellers out there, this is your competition. You are competing with all of these homes to try to get the attention of buyers. This year, we had 56 homes on the market in the month of March in Gilroy. That's an increase of 21.7% from the same time last year. So last year, we had 46 homes on the market. And if we're trying to figure out where we're going in the future with inventory on Gilroy, let's take a look at last year and see what things were going on. So between February and March, we saw an increase last year. We saw that same increase this year, not as dramatic, but still an increase. And then between March and April, we saw a pretty big increase. This is all seasonally pretty normal in terms of month-to-month performance. You can see that on this chart, as I do with all of my charts, I have both Marches right next to each other on the far right. So you can see March of 2023 and March of 2022 right next to each other. And I've color-coded March of 2022 as red just so it stands out more. And you can obviously see that that is simply there so you can compare it side by side to this year's numbers. But if I was going to estimate where we're going to go with total active listings in the coming months, I'd say it's going to increase similarly to what it was last year, but I'm guessing we're not going to see the dramatic increases that we saw last year. We're seeing fewer sellers coming onto the market, but one interesting thing is that Gilroy does seem to be one of the few communities that is more calibrated to the realities of today's market, which might indicate more attention from buyers in that market. And I know I'm seeing folks who were searching in South San Jose or in Morgan Hill who are now broadening their search to include Gilroy. So that's an interesting sign, just something to keep in the back of your head as well. The months of inventory currently stands at 1.6. That is a super low number. Nationally, anywhere from 5 to 7 months is considered to be balanced. Here in the Bay Area, I don't think balanced is really 5 to 7. I think it's probably 4.5 to 5.5 months is more balanced for our local market. But no matter how you slice it, this is very low inventory for what we are seeing. If you were to look at just this number, and this is something I've said I know now for several months, if we were to just look at this number, we would assume we're in a seller's market just because inventory is so low. But because of those interest rates and because of buyers sort of holding back, we just haven't really seen folks jump into the market so that the competition levels are high enough. Interestingly enough, in other areas in Santa Clara County and San Jose, we're actually seeing homes in many cases selling for over asking price. So that low inventory is playing a part in those markets. It's not so much down here in Gilroy, though. If we take a look at new listings, now these are the number of homeowners who decided to become home sellers in the month of March. So this is homes that were just listed in the month of March. We can see that in 2023, that number was at 44. The same time last year, 79 homes. So far more sellers jumping onto the market in March of last year than this year. And remember, that's the last month where in this mind of sellers, things were okay. It was a hot market. Buyers were still buying in pretty big numbers. So the optimism on the part of sellers was absolutely there, along with buyers at the same time, which kind of got squished at the end of March as interest rates took an uptick. This represents a 44% decline in the total number of new listings compared to the same time last year. And if we're looking for hints on where that number is likely going to go, between February and March of last year, we saw a very big jump. February of March of this year, we saw a jump, but nowhere near as big as it was comparatively last year. Once we got past March of last year, we saw it flatten in April with a little bit of an uptick in May. And then after that, a steady decline right up to December, which is a very normal trend to see as we head through the summer and then into the winter months. So very normal performance in terms of seasonal influences, but I wouldn't be surprised if we just don't see the increases. It wouldn't be surprising to me if in April it's relatively flat, maybe 44, maybe even a little less, or maybe 1 or 2 more next month. And then in May, I would guess we won't again see a 15 home jump. We'll probably see a bit of a jump, maybe a handful, 2, 3, 4 homes maybe. But that'll probably be it, unless something dramatic changes in our local market here in Gilroy. Next, total number of homes sold. In March of 2023, we sold 35 homes. And remember, when we say a sold home, we mean escrow closed. In other words, everybody got paid. So the seller got their money, the bank issued their loan, the buyer got their loan so that they could now start paying it. But that reflects an offer that was accepted 30 to 45 days earlier, depending on how long escrow was on that house. So keep that in mind, because this is sort of a not leading indicator. It indicates what folks were willing to offer and accept as offers the month before or even 2 months before. Overall, that total number of homes sold represents a 22% decline from the same time last year, when the total number of homes sold in March of 2022 was 45. If we're looking for trends, between February and March of last year, relatively flat. And because of the small number of homes, right, the volume of homes that are being sold, we're talking about dozens, right? We're talking about 45 homes. We're talking about 35 homes, not hundreds and hundreds of homes. This sample size is not something you can make huge predictions on based on past performance. However, if we're going to try to draw some broad strokes, between February and March, we saw a little bit of an increase. We saw that increase here. Between March and April of last year, we saw a pretty big jump in the total number of homes sold. And again, I think that fits in with the season. This is when, if buyers are going to come out, this is when they tend to come out. So these homes tend to get sold in these months of March and April. So, and again, this represents homes that probably went into contract in the month before. My guess would be that we're going to see an uptick next month, just not as dramatic as we saw last year. Overall average list price. Now, this one is super interesting. This is one where you get to take a peek inside the mind of sellers. This is what the home was listed for at the time it went onto the MLS. So these are expectations. This is what sellers were hoping to get when they listed the home. It's down 4.6% from the same time last year. This is a good thing. The way the market is right now, sellers coming onto the market better calibrated to what the market will support is very important, because the longer you stay on the market, the less you're likely to get for your home currently in Gilroy. Because remember, we're not seeing multiple offers in Gilroy. When we get to it, we'll see we're not getting full asking price on homes. So you need to price your home smartly in order to get it sold as quickly as possible, so you get that maximum amount for your home. Last year, the average list price was $1,209,000. This year, at the same time, it's $1,153,000. And we can see, and again, this is one of those numbers that very much suffers from the low sample size of homes that get listed in Gilroy. You can see we've got that big peak in February. Kind of in your mind, normalize that to a flatter number here, so that we're just trying to devise what trends are. And you can see that overall, over the course of the last year, the trend has been a little bit down, which again, I think is normal for what we're seeing in the local marketplace. The real bit important number, which we're going to look at next, is the actual sales price. So keep in your mind this 4.6% number, because this is going to be an interesting one to consider as we look at that next sales number. All right, now this is the average sales price. Interestingly enough, since January, average sales prices have actually been pretty high. They've gone up. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that we've seen so many buyers migrating down from San Jose and Morgan Hill, who still want to get that great house, but because they needed to lower their budget a little bit, that house, maybe that 4-bedroom, 3-bath home that they wanted in San Jose that was going to cost them $1.5 or $1.6 million, maybe they're able to find that home in Gilroy for $1.2, $1.1 million. And they were able to adjust their location instead of adjusting their price in the same region where they were originally listing. I hope that makes sense. I hope I didn't just confuse things. But the bottom line is shifting to a market where what they want is just a little bit less expensive than the markets that they had been looking in. And I saw an awful lot of that with buyers who had been looking in San Jose, South San Jose and Morgan Hill particularly. Average sales prices are down 5.4%. So you can see that expectations headed the same direction. And let's see, that was down 4.6 in terms of expectations, but average sales price was down 5.4. So not a huge delta between the two, right? Maybe 1% difference. So homes are coming on the market in Gilroy in a far more reasonable place to get themselves sold. So that is good news. They are the only community where this is true. In all of Santa Clara County, San Jose, Morgan Hill, this is the only community where the average original list price or expectations of sellers are down 4.6% from last year. All the other areas are 8.2% for Santa Clara County, higher. So sellers' expectations were higher in San Jose. They were higher in San Jose by 5.3, higher by 8.2 in Santa Clara County overall, and higher in Morgan Hill by 9%. And in this equation, in these numbers, that makes Gilroy smarter than the other markets, not at a disadvantage, because these folks will get their homes, hopefully, sold much more quickly. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at percent of list price. This now represents looking into the minds of buyers. If we were looking into the seller's mind a couple of slides ago, this is the one where we can see what buyers were offering at a specific list price, meaning the list price this is compared to is what the price was at the time the offer was made. So not looking at the original list price, but looking at that list price when the offer got written by that buyer. And we can see the number sits at 99.6%. Meaning that on average, sellers are taking 0.4% below what their list price was, what their asking price was at the time. And that's still reasonable, but we've been below 100% since August of 2022. A couple other communities for the last couple of months have now been over 100%. San Jose was one that I mentioned. But overall, last year that was 108.2. Overall, it's down 8.6% from the same time last year. So I feel that given how close we are to getting close to list price on average here in Gilroy, I feel like pricing is pretty good. You're not going to need to do as much price reducing as some of these other communities, because I don't see a scenario in the coming months where this switches, right? Where we see a whole bunch of buyers suddenly jumping in. Now, at some point, those interest rates will go down. As I've mentioned before, interest rates are raised to fight inflation, which is what they're currently doing. And we're right about to face another 0.25 increase from the Fed on interest rates. And again, always keep in mind, there is no direct relationship to that number and interest rates, but more to the 10-year treasury. But there is a psychological effect. So you tend to see interest rates jump after they make those changes. And then over time, that will usually self-correct and start to go back down to reflect what's happening with treasuries. But eventually, they're going to want to fight recession, which means they lower interest rates. And that also has a psychological effect, which tends to see mortgage rates go down relatively quickly in synchronous with that from a psychological standpoint, and then they maybe stabilize and go up a little bit more after. But that would be the scenario we'd be in when they're starting to prioritize fighting recession over fighting inflation. No question we're going to end up having to fight a recession at some point, but right now they're still in inflation fighting mode. Next, let's take a look at days on market. This one has seen a pretty big improvement in the world of Gilroy when we look at it month to month. If we look at it compared to the same time last year in the month of March, we saw 8 days to get a home sold. It's currently up 325% to 34 days. And anything over 30 days is, I think, an important psychological milestone for sellers. If you've got a seller who's been on the market for 30 days, I think they're more open to potentially reducing their price or accepting a lower offer. And some of that is happening here in Gilroy, obviously, with homes selling below asking price on average. But take a look at February. It was 62 days. And I want to call that out because it feels like bad news on the face of it, but when you actually dig into it and look at what actually happened, it was really just a couple of homes that had been on the market forever that finally sold. So I guess it was good news in one side, simply because you were taking some older inventory and finally getting it off the rolls for folks that are trying to get their homes sold. But again, 34 days, still over 30 days. I'd love to see this number get below 30. But even then, 34 days is not horrible. There are other areas in terms of days on market where we're seeing 33 days in Morgan Hill, 25 days in San Jose, and 25 days overall in Santa Clara County is a good comparison. So not horrible, but I would expect to see this do a little better given the fact that Gilroy has been smartly pricing homes when they come on the market better than some other areas. All right, let's take a look at price reductions. Now, this is an interesting number, and I think it actually, again, is good news for Gilroy. Now, last month, 26.7% of homes on the market in Gilroy had a price reduction. This month, March of 2023, that number is 18.8%. So the number of homes that needed to reduce their price because they were overpriced to begin with dropped. So that's good news, and that supports our conclusion that homes are coming onto the market in Gilroy at more calibrated prices to what the market will bear. So, and in terms of where I think people should be looking the most, I think all those folks who are broadening their search from San Jose and Morgan Hill or wherever else, right? Southern San Jose, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, wherever that might be, down to Gilroy are doing a smart thing. I think Gilroy is well calibrated. I think that if you're buying something right now in Gilroy, I don't think that's a thing you're going to potentially regret. But I think there's still room for a lot more downside for some of these other markets for folks. So I think Gilroy represents a great opportunity for an awful lot of buyers in today's market. All right. Of course, the goal is always to leave you with more information on the table than we take up in your time. I hope we've achieved that this time. If you would like to visit me, you can find me at soldbyrobert.com, and I've got some great tools available for you. I have one that I'm calling my homeowner tool, not my seller tool, my homeowner tool, because it provides you with so much in-depth information about what you can do with your home that even if you have no interest in selling your home and you plan on keeping it for generations to come, I think this is data you should have. It is basically giving you, without putting in much effort yourself, data that I always suggest my homeowners look into once a year. And this is a monthly update that'll give you, of course, the estimated home value of your home, but it'll talk about your local market. It'll talk about different options for you, how to tap into your equity. It'll let you know how much equity you have. It is an amazing tool, and I'm going to be creating a video on it here on the YouTube channel at some point in the next week or so. But if you would like to take advantage of that absolutely free, head on over to soldbyrobert.com. At the very top of the page on the left-hand side, there's a place to enter your address. Enter your address, you'll get that instant home value estimate, and then you'll have an option to kick off the service that'll give you a monthly update on all of the various pieces of information that you'd ever want to know about your home, the market, your options, different things you could do in terms of tapping into your equity. It's really an amazing tool, and I have searched for a very long time for a tool that accomplishes all this. And I just started this a couple of weeks ago, and so far it's been getting rave reviews from my clients who've been using it. All right. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.